welcome to Talk Indonesia, where you get thoughtful emotion. I'm Dalton Tanonaka. Here is this week's TI Hot List. Trading places. What must Indonesia do to upgrade its economic assets? Public process. Is it possible? Is it possible to run government more like a business? And soul food. Why appreciation of music is a sign of a maturing society, in my opinion. Here beside me every week is Rahayu Saraswati, Sarah, actress and activist.
Thank you.
That's it. And our guest host this week, Gita Wirjawan, Minister of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia and a man with talented fingers. Sir, welcome. Hot topic number 1, trading places. Indonesia has the world's attention, particularly in doing business. Now, we reported this past week that second quarter foreign investment hit a record high at nearly $6 billion. That's up 30% over the same period last year. That means basically more non-Indonesia investors than ever are banking on making money by spending money here. But a certain trade official recently said that Indonesia cannot continue to depend on its abundant and profitable natural resources for its economic health. We've got to make things, and that official is Gita. Explain that. In what context did you mean that?
It's not a zero-sum game. It's basically our attempt to expand the economic pie. And if we take a look at the portrait of Indonesia from a trade standpoint, from an industrial standpoint, there's not enough of stuff that gets processed in Indonesia. And I think whatever policies, economic policies that we come out with, I think have to be supportive of our ability of not increasing ability to climb up the value chain. So, you know, a lot of stuff that gets sent off from Indonesia has not been and is not processed. I think there's a lot of value creation, you know, by way of processing this, whether it relates to some of the minerals and some of the other, you know, natural resources. And I think we're just, you know, quite conscious of if we don't do this now or soon, of the risk that we will become just, you know, a natural resource producer, you know, for our kids and grandkids, and that certainly is not the kind of future that we want for the future
and you're talking about, of course, the mining regulation that's been on the books. It's not something that you push forward, right? Yeah. That you have to now produce things here and not just ship away raw materials, right?
Right.
Now, besides mining, and I know you want to, you want to talk about mining a little bit? I mean,
a little bit, yeah. Just simply because you know, just last week I was talking to a guy who, out of the blue, without knowing that I was going to meet you, sir. He started, you know, he's in the coal and mining industry, so, and then he started saying how in the beginning he was putting you up on this pedestal, and then all of a sudden he found out about the policies that you were pushing forward, and how, in his point of view, it became an issue because, in a way, it's almost like we're turning away from the blessings that God has given us, which is natural resources.
We're not turning away.
No.
I think let's be clear about that. And again, let me emphasize, this is not a zero-sum game. And we're not prohibiting anybody from sending our natural resources overseas. We're imposing an export tax that amounts to, in some cases, 20%. Some are not even being imposed taxes upon. But, you know, I think we're pretty clear-headed. Our policy posture is not to undermine and piss off anybody out there. And there is always an opportunity for anybody that's been heavily involved in the status quo of just sending things off, and for him or her to get involved in the downstream area. And there's value creation to be done there, and there's money to be made.
Yeah, and you're looking at the longer term, not just continuing what's going on.
And
exactly.
I just wanted to, you know, another aspect that I wanted to add into this mixture is, basically, well, the other question was infrastructure. You know, like electricity. If we do want to develop and process, you know, those into, do we have what it takes for this to be sustainable in the long term?
You can't do it overnight, and so.
Well, no. I mean, let's talk about electricity. Our ability to produce electricity is about 3,000 megawatts of worth of power generation delta per year. We've, you know, created capacity of, you know, less than 50,000 megawatts of power generation, 3,000 megawatts power generation per year. Now, the question is that enough? for us to get a lot more industrialized? Absolutely not, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I think we've got to ramp up from being able to build only 3,000 megawatts of power generation capability per year to a lot bigger than that. Now, can we do it? Yes, we can, because we have a lot bigger fiscal space today than ever. You know, our debt to GDP at 24% and on a continuing declination. And our ability to collect taxes, you know, is getting better and better by the year. Our budget this year is 1,500 trillion rupees. And that's only going to get bigger. So going forward, I think we've got to be very clear about what is needed for us to make sure that the processing element of the value chain gets supported by the necessary infrastructure.
It's not a unilateral thing. You need other ministries. You need everybody, all sectors.
Everybody working together.
Got to move on. A couple more topics now. You know, besides mining.
I was afraid you were going to say
besides
that.
mining, can Indonesia be transformed into, for example, a new Silicon Valley or a Redmond, Washington? I mean, we're already assembling cars, electronics, higher value products. Where can we move to? What can we look forward to? What sectors?
I think we've got a chance, but not tomorrow. It will take some years. You've got to, you know, backtrack a bit to size up where we are from an educational infrastructure standpoint.
Yes.
We've got fewer than 30,000 PhDs compared to 800,000 in China and 600,000 in India.
And are we pumping out engineers?
Well,
are we pumping out?
We'll get there. If we take a look at, we peel the MP3EI, the master plan that was concocted last year, it tells a story of how many graduates we're going to be able to have produced by 2025. And that relates to about 17 million of them. Now, we've just got to be clear about how many of these 17 million we want to churn out to become PhDs in, you know, technologies and masters in economics and bachelors in agriculture and all that.
You bring in the point that exactly, I was so excited you bring that up, because really one of the most important, the main infrastructure is human resources.
Yes, right.
If we don't have the people to actually develop, you know, whatever plans we have, vision for the future, the next generation,
and that's dependent on other people, like education ministry.
Education.
Okay, one quick thing. We're going to go a little longer in this segment because I want to get in one more thing about Foxconn, Taiwan's Foxconn. A recent opinion piece in the Jakarta Post, you may have read it, from a professor in South Korea saying...
William Huckey.
Yeah, he criticized it because he said we're basically being a cheaper substitute for China. I know you are deeply involved in helping bring Taiwan, Foxconn here.
I think it's well beyond that.
Okay.
Well, never has there been, you know, a proposition of trying to be cheaper than anybody else here. I think it's really about climbing up the value chain. There's no reason for any Indonesian not to aspire to be able to be building stuff that matters. It's not just
builds iPhones.
They build the iPhones, and the Nokias and the Motorola's.
So you defend it to the end. I mean, that obviously it's going to bring jobs and a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't need to write an opinion on OPED to defend it. I think the solid majority understand that Indonesia certainly has to have a future where our kids and grandkids shouldn't just be planters and miners. We've got to be able to build something. We've got to be able to create something. And that really is part of the thesis, the Foxconn stuff.
Okay, we will continue shortly. Is it possible to run government like a business? This is Talk Indo from Jakarta with Sarah and guest host Gita Wirjawan. Hot topic number 2, public process. Candidates with non-political backgrounds often run on the resumes. In the U.S. right now, Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney pushes his business experience in running a venture capital company and heading the Salt Lake Olympics. Here in Indonesia, leaders such as Yusuf Kala and Joko Widodo have and are promoting their expertise in the private sector, having come from running their own businesses. But are politics and business management compatible? Not as simple as people think, correct? I mean, as a CEO, you can make a unilateral decision. Not so as a governor or mayor or president.
The way I look at it, Dalton, is that, well, first of all, there are pros and cons of both sides, whether it's government or whether it's business. Now, government, actually, you don't actually have to compare. It's just whether or not you have good governance. Now, there are certain things from the professional point of view that I think we can actually take up, which is that something I feel Indonesia needs to learn a little bit more, because we have a mentality or mindset, correct me if I'm wrong, but we call it nggak enakan, you know, the feeling of, oh, you know, I'm not, professionalism isn't so readily available here. Why? Because the mentality that you feel you cannot fire people you are close to, even if they are not doing
Okay, so
the
but then
right
we have a
job.
gentleman like Gita here who comes from the private sector.
Exactly.
You know, stellar private sector career. I mean, it's a nice campaign piece to say, I'm going to run Jakarta like a business. I'm going to run into, but in the positive side, what best business practices can carry over from the private sector? Like, what are you employing in your ministry, for example, that have helped?
I think we can backtrack a bit. You know, in my days as the chairman of the BKPM, it was the simple stuff that matters. You know, making sure that you said governance is there. Is governance there within the government? Absolutely. But we set out new policies to make sure that the people within
For example?
the institution, education. We sent a lot more people for schooling, for technical proficiency, lingual and non-lingual, and all the other stuff.
I mean, people from your ministry to upgrade their skills.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's being done. It was done with the investment board, and it's being done with the Ministry of Trade. And the second is the relevant KPIs. I mean, within the business domain, you have KPIs such
KPIs means?
Key performance indicators, such as, what should be your bottom line for the end of the year, how much profit, how much revenue, how much market share, how much margins you got to generate. Within the government, you don't work like that, but you can certainly set KPIs that are geared towards certain technical thresholds. I mean, for example, like the central bank, I think, should have a KPI of managing inflation below a certain rate.
And it doesn't.
Well, I mean, they've done a great job in managing inflation. Trade Ministry, I think, should be given the task of managing surplus at less or at least a certain amount, and making sure that the total trade balance, total trade amount goes up by 5, 10, 15%. Barring catastrophic scenarios. But what we're seeing today is, a slowdown in many economies around the world, in Western Europe and the U.S. So you gotta factor stuff like that in.
What doesn't work? What doesn't work in the public arena that did when you were in private sector?
What doesn't work in the public arena that
Yeah.
Look, I think people and anybody coming from the private sector has a certain way of communicating, and it's the directness that you guys exemplify, that we have exemplified in the private sector. In the government, you don't communicate that.
You got to socialize.
Exactly, you got to socialize. Let's not forget you've got multi-stakeholders here. You've got your own ministry, you've got other ministries within a cabinet, and you've got the legislature, and you've got the regional government. So.
It's not as clear cut.
You got frustrated.
Exactly.
It sounds like you got frustrated.
No. It's actually fun in the sense that it's good fun in the sense that you're seeing the different dynamics within your own domain and beyond your domain, and how you deal with people in the regions and all that.
So you're changing thinking, you're saying.
It's so interesting how he says it's good fun, because I'm one of those allergic to politics. I mean, I'm one of those that I don't know if I have the patience
and she comes
to
from a family
sit
of
in
politics.
and talk and figure out how everybody needs to play nice with each other.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's get the job done. And I want to mention a little bit. I agree when there are certain things that the government needs to learn, is that long-term vision. Sometimes, which is actually what the governments actually have, which is the private sector also needs to bring in, which is that profitability.
Right.
When
like especially the central bank. When you're spending a lot more than your income.
Interesting idea, managing the surplus. That would be interesting for a business leader like you.
I think the frustration is usually coming out of the notion that things don't change as quickly as you want them.
Or move as quickly.
But I'm a half full guy, half glass full guy. I've taken a view that I think Indonesia is moving on the right track, and I think it's going to be a great economy in the next 10 to 20 years. And I'm completely aware of the fact that we are taking the necessary big little steps or small big steps, you know, one at a time. But if anybody expects things to change within 24 hours, it's probably not possible. But as long as you know that things are moving in the right direction and the directionality is well defined in a good way, I think that's all you got to take a view on. And you take ownership with that, you stick with the script, and you just go with it.
Yeah, and you got to think long term. And a successful leader, obviously, in these times, is the one who can marry successful business skills with public servant realities and bureaucracies. And I think
where you're serving the greater purpose and for the people.
And
Right.
we hear that he's doing that very well,
Yes.
very nicely. Okay, so when talking to carries on, why I think the number of music clubs in a city indicates heart and soul. We're glad you're still watching Talk Indo. Hot topic number 3, soul food. Music is often said to be food for the soul. From the pan flute days in ancient Rome to the everyman tunes of Bruno Mars, many savage beasts were soothed by a cool tune. But the existence and survival of live music clubs is dependent on several factors. You need a solid middle class with disposable income. You need the support of businesses willing to take a chance that customers will come. And you need the talent to fill those clubs. Now, Indonesia has a talent. Gita, you were part of a group, your investors, that started a music club, and I used to go to it, called Moonlight.
Yeah,
and
no longer around.
Great setting, great system, location accessible. Why didn't it work? I would think people would flock and support that thing.
You know, that's $1 million question. Why did it not work? Jazz was something that we were trying to project and promote. But it just so happens that people don't gravitate to it as much as they used to.
It's not a mass kind of thing, yeah?
Well, you know, we've got a lot of the Justin Bieber and the Jason Mraz generation in Indonesia. And these guys gravitate to a totally different genre of music, which I completely am respectful of. But I think there's still a core within the society around the world that's fully appreciative of jazz.
You know what's sparking that is discovering talent is YouTube.
Janji sekarang ku takkan berharap tak perlu kau berubah.
So I was alerted to this 15-year-old by her father, her proud dad, Christian. I mean, she's better than many other YouTube performers. But my point is, different generation. I still wish there were more live music venues that feature more than top 40 cover bands. I mean, is that asking too much?
No, I think it's a matter of packaging as well, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain places that are not known as a music club or a music hub, but they do have live music there. And sometimes they change every night, and it's the people that know, oh, it's this band going to be playing at that time over there.
And hotels can play a role. They have nice venues, but they're not doing much, right?
Well, I mean, there are other ways to promote music. I mean, with, you know, in my past, we were busy producing albums. You know, we produced 16 albums already,
really?
Inclusive of the likes of Tompi and Smash. Smash was a smashing success last year. It's a boy band.
The boy band, yes.
You know, made up of a few
Sarah's
kids.
favorite.
Who, you know, do that.
The sausage commercial, is that the one?
Exactly. You know, it caters to the right set of people.
Okay, so the trend will come around, you both think.
You know,
or is it economics?
I think
evolution,
people have money to
society
spend.
evolution as well.
More than trend, it's money.
I'm not sticky on music. I'm actually all across the spectrum. Exactly. And I think it'll come around, and it's a function of time.
So maybe Moonlight will open again?
It could be branded differently.
Okay, it's still there, though.
Dalton or Sarah?
We'll come and help you open the club. She can sing, too. She's being modest. She can sing.
Oh, will you please?
She's a singer.
You're still pushing me there.
Well, I think as the months pass, you're right. I think as Jakarta matures, as everything matures, the venues will come around again. So I agree. Okay. Time to check our feedback now. Nessa tweeted this comment. I just love the way Dalton speaks. Awesome. Well, I work on my English whenever I can, Nessa.
You're finally putting in something for yourself. I'm
you
so
know
proud
I
of
never,
you.
Okay. Widania emailed this from Tangerang. You have stolen my heart. I love this TV program so much. And we promise not to break your heart. And Yuka tweeted this, always waiting for Talk Indonesia. Thank you. Keep tweeting, posting on our Facebook page, or email us with name and city to talkindo@metrotvnews.com. Final words, Gita.
The month of August is a special month. As such, I want to wish everybody success, health, and prosperity.
Sarah, final words.
Final words. Basically, before I get to forget about this, but very important, close to my heart, I've said how I'm an advocate for the fight against human trafficking. And my friends and I have finally gotten together, and we are launching a new movement, Indonesia for Freedom. And you can check the website out at www.id4f.com or .org. Please join this movement, and we will say no to slavery in Indonesia.
Yay. Okay. My final words, not as heavy. Simple, clean water. Now, if I were running for office here, that's the first thing I would promise to fix. It's a basic human need, something government should be compelled to deliver. It's a sign of a country progressing upward that its residents have clean tap water. So candidates, say it, then begin to work on it, and believe me, support will follow, because it's the one thing that hits home with everybody.
Okay, I'll give you some clean water.
I'm not speaking for myself.
I know.
I'm speaking
right
for all
with
of us.
you.
And
right
that is
there
Talk
with you.
Indo for this week. For Sarah and Gita, I'm Dalton Tanaka. See you next time.